you. So can you talk about some differences in what we should be looking for in life partner, and maybe what we kind of like some traits that aren't as important in the long term?
Yes, absolutely. And so, yeah, what I've found in talking to people about who they're looking for is that there's certain traits that people tend to really optimize for. And we know from the field of relationship science that a lot of these just are not correlated with long-term relationship success. And so some of them are things like looks, and money. And so, yes, looks matter. You want to be attracted to the person. Money matters. Happiness for happiness, you usually need to make us above a certain threshold. But what we know from the research is that people adapt to their surroundings. And so, no matter how hot or how rich your partner is, you get used to your situation over time and you no longer notice it as much, which is why looks and money don't matter as much as we think they do. Another one that people overestimate is having the same personality as your partner. And so people say to me things like, I'm so extroverted, I'm the life of the party, my girlfriend's really introverted, it could never work. And I'm like, no, you are so intense. You are enough. To fill a room as it is. Like, you don't need your personality twin. You need somebody who complements you. And so people really overestimate being similar to their partners in terms of personality. And a similar thing is people overestimate having shared hobbies, right? It's okay if you love wine and your girlfriend doesn't, as long as she gives you space to explore your interest in wine. And so you don't need to be the same personality and you don't need to have the same hobbies. On the other hand, are these qualities of what matters more than people think for long term relationship success. And these are things that certainly people know that they matter, but it's not what I hear people actively looking for when they're going on dates. And this is what people really should be valuing. And so the first one is emotional stability. And so this is the idea that when something happens, right? When they get a disappointment at work, when their parent says something hurtful to them, how do they respond? Do they take a minute and do they think of a thoughtful way of responding, or do they just react right away? And so in that moment is when you can really see if somebody's emotionally stable based on how they react to triggers. Another thing is loyalty. Is this the type of person who keeps friends for the long term, or are they just fair weather friends? Or are they only with their friends when the good things are happening? And loyalty is really important. Another one is a growth mindset. And so this is somebody who believes that life is something that you can improve, right? You're born with a certain set of skills, but you can actually invest in those skills. You can grow. They don't feel like, you're either talented or you're not, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so this is the kind of person who feels like life is something that you can put energy into and improve and build your own path. Another thing that matters more than people think is the ability to make hard decisions together, because oftentimes in life you are faced with hard choices, and this is your teammate. This is the person who's by your side, who you really need to trust to help you make the right choice, and the person who you really want to go to for advice and who you want to collaborate with. And then finally, what's probably become the most important one to me is what side of you that person brings out. And so the idea here is that whoever your partner brings out in you, that's who you'll be a majority of the time. And so if your partner's great on paper, but they make you feel insecure, they make you question yourself, they make you feel uncomfortable, they make you feel de-energized or depressed, why would you want to be with that person? And so really tuning into the side of you that that person brings out, and then making sure that you find somebody who brings out the best side of you.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned this in your book, is like all these kind of like long-term traits you're looking for, like emotional stability, loyalty, like skills to fight well, bring out the best of your personality. Like those things are kind of hard to discover if you're just looking at a dating app where you just have like their pictures and maybe their job occupation and where they live. So it's hard to like discover the long-term traits in kind of like a short-term like format. So is there like any besides just like going on continuous dates, is there any way people could kind of identify whether someone might be a long-term partner in like a short amount of time?
Yeah, I think you're bringing up a really great point, which is just to take one step back. So the framework of this chapter is look for a life partner, not a prom date. And so a prom date, if you go back to when you were going to prom, it's somebody who is hot, who would look good in pictures, who you want to dance with, maybe who you want to sleep with at the end of the night. But you're not asking yourself, will my prom date be there with me if I, God forbid, get cancer? Or will my partner be the person I want to make decisions about? Are we going to send our kids to private school or public school? You're not thinking about those things. But at a certain age, you need to transition from looking for that fun loving prom date to the reliable, strong, loyal life partner. And so that's really what the chapter is about. It's about telling people to make this change and also telling them what to look for. And you're absolutely right. Things like looks are much easier to assess from a two-dimensional dating profile picture. You can just look at them and say, how symmetrical is their face? How attracted to their body am I, right? You can make an instant judgment around those things. And even things like what they do for a living and maybe how much money they make, those are things that are much easier to assess. Things like loyalty and a growth mindset, that requires a lot more effort. And so what I recommend people do is not try to figure this all out from a profile, because that would be very challenging, but to get to dates with people sooner and actually ask certain questions that help you triangulate if this is true for the person. So you might say something like, what is something that you used to think was true that you no longer think is true? And that shows that somebody is thoughtful and that they're putting effort into developing their minds and their opinions. Or what's the last great book you read? What's the last great podcast you read? Maybe ask them for advice and see, do you like the way they think? Could you imagine making decisions with them? And so it requires you to be more creative in the questions, but it is something where if you know what you're looking for and you have questions that help you get at that, it becomes much easier to say, is this the type of person who's emotionally stable, loyal, kind, has a growth mindset, etc. And then for the what side of you they bring out, it's really about training yourself after the date to say, how do I feel? How do I feel in my body? How do I feel emotionally? And really tuning into not do they check off all the boxes on my checklist, but much more specifically, how do I feel around them?